Hello. I wanted to use today's video to talk about my fears and concerns going into adult life. So basically, um, where I'm at now is I'm a senior and I'm graduating college this year. And going into adult life, I basically have three options that I can do right after I graduate. And I'm not particularly sure which one I'm going to do. And I've been thinking about it a lot, and I actually was in a very similar situation when I was in high school. So, when I was in high school, I had basically three options to choose from how how to approach my entrance into college. So, basically, the first option was I could go to one of the schools that I was admitted to directly out of high school. The problem with that option was that the high school that or the college that I most wanted to go to was very expensive. The second option is that I could have gone to community college, hopefully for 1 year, and then transfer to a 4 year college as a junior. And the third option was to take a year off. And in that year off, I'm probably most likely would have moved up to Seattle with Alexandra and Caroline, and I would have worked there part time or full time, I guess, and I would have hopefully gotten residency. And then sometime after that, I would somehow go to some school in Washington. Probably I would shoot for UW and I would pay in-state tuition. But obviously, if you know me, then I then it you know that I ended up going to community college for 1 year, and then I transferred as a junior, and basically I'm spending 3 years in college instead of four. And now I'm at Berkeley, so not too far from home. But that's basically what happened. But basically, the time in high school, the time in my senior year when I had to sort through those three options and figure out which one I was actually going to do was probably the most stressful time of my life ever. And part of that was the just kind of the high school institution, in that all the other seniors were announcing what they were doing, and a lot of people knew what they were doing. And then I had friends who were older who were bugging me about what I was going to do, and I just didn't know. And there were too many people asking me what I was doing, and I didn't know what I was doing. So it was really frustrating and confusing and scary because I didn't know what I was going to do. But at the same time, it wasn't that bad when I'm looking back on it, because no matter all of the three options essentially led to the same thing. They all led to college. So I knew that I was going to college somehow. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. And now, when I'm graduating college, that's a lot different, because basically when you graduate college, your entire life is completely open, and you could, like, the day after you graduate, you literally can do anything and you can choose whatever you want, but every path that you could possibly take does not lead to the same thing. And I think that's what's scary, because when you pick these paths now, or at least when I was in high school and I was picking between paths, again, they all led to the same thing. So it's not like if I picked a certain path, I would be giving up a different path, but I wouldn't be giving up the ultimate goal. And I think the scary thing about graduating from college is that basically most of the paths lead to a different goal. And if you pick a different path, then you get rid of the other path and the journey, and you also get rid of that ultimate goal. And I think giving up goals and giving up that much, just like giving up life choices, is scary. Like, what if I pick this and it could be a nice experience and I could be really happy, but I could never get the opportunity to do this again. And I'm in my early 20s, and shouldn't I be paying attention to having fun and doing all this stuff while I'm still young? And I don't know. So basically, yeah, I wanted to say that getting out of college is scary. But Now transitioning into the second point, I think, so for me and Caroline, or excuse me for speaking for you, Caroline, but I'm pretty sure this is sure. But basically, as we were growing up, we had one thing that we wanted to do, and we had one thing in mind, and that was to be a veterinarian. But eventually, along the line, even if you're still interested in animals and you're still interested in science and surgery and helping animals, sometimes you get to a point where your priorities change. And that just becomes different. Now, another thing is that when you're thinking about your career, so for me, I wanted to be a vet, but then that changed. And then the next thing is I wanted to be a video editor, and I still want to be a video editor, and I want to make movies, and I want to be a filmmaker, and I want to do that. So I consciously know that, and I've pointed myself in that direction, and because I've pointed myself in that direction, I'm getting a lot of opportunities, and I'm involving myself in a lot of things that relate to that. Now, I think there's a third kind of interest or career path that sometimes is missed, and that's kind of just as you're going through life and you're doing all of this stuff, somehow you've collected things that lead you in a certain direction. So, for example, what I'm talking about is when I was in intermediate school, I was a teacher's assistant for my core teacher. And eventually, when I was being a teacher's assistant, she asked me to sit down with these kids and with these 7th graders, and I was in 8th grade. I sat down with these 7th graders and I went over their essays with them, and I helped them peer review and I gave them advice. And I thought it was weird at first because I was only 1 year older than them and I was tutoring them, but I did it because she asked me to do it. Then, when I was in high school, I started teaching Taekwondo to these little kids at my Taekwondo studio because I was a black belt, and it was kind of black belt obligation to give back to the studio and help and be a teacher. So I taught these kids Taekwondo, and I was kind of iffy about it at first because I don't really like little kids, or I never think of myself as liking little kids. But it was actually a fun experience, and I ended up liking teaching. And then when I kept going in high school, then I eventually took a little Latin kid who needed tutoring, and I would help him, and I actually tutored 2 kids, I guess, on Latin, and I would help them, and I would try to be their big buddy, to use a term from elementary school. And then somehow, also in high school, I ended up going over to Kenya for the summer, and I taught English and math and religion and history and all this stuff to these kids in Kenya. And then when I was in community college, I ended up being a English teacher for high school dropouts. So like I was saying, there's usually something that you're interested in for a long time, and then somehow it just turns out that might not work out, so you steer away from it. And then there are the things that you purposely want and you purposely angle yourself towards. But then there are also the things that I never thought that I wanted to be a teacher, and I never thought that I liked kids. But somehow throughout my life, it just so happens that I've been somehow teaching this entire time, and I actually have significant teaching experience, and it's just surprising because that never registered to me as something that I could do. And I brought this up because one of the 3 options that I'm thinking of has to do with video editing and then academics. And then the third one just happens to be teaching because I finally noticed that this is what I've been doing a lot of for a long time. And basically, I've been thinking a lot about the JET program. So JET is the Japanese Exchange and Teaching Program. And there was an information session at my school last week, and I went to it, and the guy who was presenting was giving us application advice. And he said, okay, for your statement, it's good to mention your experience with kids. So I said, oh, well, I taught Taekwondo, and I taught these kids in Kenya. And then he said, and the second thing is teaching experience. And I said, oh, well, I was a high school dropout tutor. And then he said interest in the culture, and it's like, well, that's easy because I'm taking Japanese and I have lots of interest in Japanese culture and Japanese film culture especially. And it was just kind of like he named off four things. I don't remember what the fourth thing was, but it was kind of like as he was naming them off, I was going check, check, check. Wow, for some reason, I never was like, oh, I want to do the JET program. I'm going to prepare myself so that I'll be a great candidate. But it just kind of happened. So basically, what I wanted to say was, first of all, college is a lot scarier than high school. It's a lot scarier to graduate college than high school because the world is totally open and it's scary to be that free and have those consequences and not have an institution around you of school or your parents to kind of help you and guide you. And you're basically cutting off paths and goals all the time. So that's why it's a lot scarier. And I think while you're trying to navigate that space, that you should also try to look out for the things that you never considered, but things that maybe you were drawing towards yourself the entire time in your entire life. And maybe you can find something that you can cultivate out of that one thing. So I don't know what I'm going to do after I graduate, but JET is one option, and I don't know. I'll see what happens. And hopefully this inspired you or helped you, or maybe it'll help you look around yourself and try to find something that you could use as a day job to protect the art that you want to do. So yeah, that's all. I'm going to go study because I have a crazy semester. But I'll see you next week, and